That's showbiz, baby. Welcome to episode 24 of That Showbiz Baby podcast, your all things music, business, and media podcast. I'm your host, Colin McKay, with my lovely co-host, Joey Wazaleski.
Lovely. I got a lovely.
Yeah. And with our guest, Zach Wilbourn from 30 Nights of Violence.
Hello.
That's a really big, I don't know why I did that. I thought like a drum roll would go in or something.
It's like 30 Nights of Violence, and then it's like the most tame. Hello.
Hello. Yeah.
30 Nights of Violence.
Hey.
Well, you can see Zach's beautiful face and ours on our socials, Twitter at ShowbizBabyPod, Facebook and Instagram at That Showbiz Baby Podcast, or you can email us, thatshowbizbabypodcast@gmail.com. We'll actually probably just start sending his headshot to people who subscribe. So if you just want a random headshot of Zach, we'll get there for you.
We can throw like a digital signature, something like that.
Oh, absolutely. We'll make it super professional. Don't worry about it.
You get a sexy headshot of
Glamour
Zach.
out the ass.
But Zach, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Cool. My name is Zach Wilbourn. I am a lyricist and a singer for Nashville metal band 30 Nights of Violence. We've been a band since 2018. We just put out a record this past summer called You'll See Me Up There, out through Unbeaten Records, a wonderful independent label in Troy, New York. But yeah, that's kind of what I do.
Wow.
Make
Awesome.
music. Yeah.
You make me feel old. I didn't realize 2018. Wow.
Yeah. It was a while ago.
Oh, man.
Seems like yesterday.
No, for real. Yeah.
Man, you know what seems like a while ago? Live music. Remember that?
Yeah.
Anyway, so live
Rest in
music
peace.
actually got a win, sort of. The executives got a win, or if you're a stockholder, you got a win, because the stocks started to just go up because of this COVID-19 vaccine that got announced. So basically on Monday, November 9th, Pfizer, which I think, no, it's Pfizer, which is going to be fun to say because it's an F and a Z. Anyway, is basically they did a press conference and they said, hey, we have this COVID vaccine that's 90% effective and it's going to be ready probably within the next year. And we're applying for FDA approval, like emergency approval. So within 30 minutes of that happening, the live industry related stock soared up, with Live Nation having a 20.8% increase to 67.73. Madison Square Garden Entertainment was up 21.4% to 84.44. And German concert promoter CTS Eventium was 23.5% up to 51.90. Well, not too shabby. 20% stock. That's like dream right there. I hope you were in on this before this happened. So if you haven't heard about the vaccine, I'll tell you a little bit about it, which is why all these people got so crazy about it. So basically the vaccine is going to come in 2 doses and it's spaced 21 days apart. And the drug right now has a 90% effective rate 7 days after the second dose. And it showed no serious side effects in a trial of 43,538 participants, not a small group of people, of racially and ethnically diverse backgrounds. And Pfizer says that the effective percentage may change as the trial continues because they're going to try it out on more people. And, you know, it might not be all the way at 90%, but not even close to 90% is very impressive when it comes to vaccines. And the vaccine is going to be available in limited availability when it first comes out, and it'll expand hopefully across the world in the United States. And basically Live Nation, with this knowledge, and I think also kind of had this in the bag, has been saying and says now that they're going to be running at scale in the summer of 2021, which is very adventurous, which is very do not sell our stock, please talk. So Live Nation in this whole time has had a 17% return rate on tickets, with festival return rates at 37% globally.
Damn.
Which is, I'm so sorry if you're involved with the festival, because that is, that's a lot of tickets. So at the time of this article being written, which was early Monday, Live Nation now trades at 212.4% above its 2020 low of 2170. And American Airlines share price is 55.4% above its 2020. And Hilton Worldwide is up 132.4% above its pandemic low after an 11.1% bump. So the whole, other parts of the industry that have to go with live are also just soaring up. Everything live events related, how you get there, where you're staying, everything like that. It's a very exciting time for live people. It's a very exciting time if you specifically work for any of these companies, because now this is the kind of stuff that can save you from layoffs and stuff like that, is having people actually believe in your company and invest back into it, in a time, because nobody wanted to invest in these companies like during this time, because we're not going to get a return for maybe potentially years at the worst time of COVID.
Yeah, but if you bought stock during that drop,
I thought about it. I really did.
Yeah, because honestly, live events, I like we've discussed before, virtual events just do not like it. I feel like for the most audience members, they just would rather be at a live event themselves than witness it on a screen. That might change within the future, but I don't think that's going to change within the next 5 years.
We haven't got to that point where we have technology that is, supersedes going to a concert in person. At least in my opinion. And maybe if you're an introvert, you're saying the opposite. You're like, yes, this is my moment. I don't have to go to shit. I'll go to your show online, go in the Instagram chat for like 2 minutes and then leave.
Yeah. I do think there is something to it. Like, it is a different experience and it can be enjoyable, and it can be very enjoyable sometimes if it's done well. But with that said, I don't know. There's just something about the energy of being around other people that it makes it social. It's like what it's about, is meeting people and like finding common ground with these acts that you like.
Zach, you're in a very energetic band, to say the least, and one that's very live dependent on stuff like that. How do you feel about more of your type of material and other bands around there, especially with the COVID-19 and how they've been adjusting to try to, cope with not having their live shows, which they're kind of known for?
Sure. Yeah. There's a lot of, there are a lot of really great people within sort of the hardcore scene that are kind of paving the way for this sort of, adjusting to this sort of new medium of live entertainment that I think is kind of acting as, the grandiose Band-Aid until we can kind of, get back to it. I think Sonny, who runs Hate56, a very popular YouTube page with a tremendous amount of, content around sort of metal live shows, hardcore live shows, that kind of thing, documenting those shows, has done a really great job working with a lot of bands. I think Code Orange is probably the one to really name right now, who's kind of in the forefront of this, new medium and adjusting to it accordingly. As a fan of the genre and kind of like, also a performer, it's very strange. And there's obviously always going to be this certain element, I think, within aggressive music that doesn't quite translate through a screen. It's just not the same without having bodies in the room. And because of that, I think within like the independent circuit and, bands sort of within our space will certainly be like the last to sort of come back, I think, as all this continues to sort of like play out. So.
Right. It's amazing, because you can say what everybody needs touring. Everybody, if you're an artist, you want to tour.
If you're a label, you want your artist to tour.
You want your artist to tour and recoup whatever tour support you gave them if they took it. You know what I mean? But basically, that's at least good to hear, because especially with the kind of music and especially like metal or hardcore and stuff like that, it's just so based on like being there at the show.
Absolutely.
And I have fun with it too. I love like going around and accidentally, pushing somebody. We're all in a mob and stuff like that. And that sounds like a nightmare right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. To be like that. So I don't think your estimation's that off, as being like you guys might be literally part of the last people, because we've talked about it on this podcast before with like, I always talk about if this vaccine, and now we might have it in the future, and it's actually like an eventuality as opposed to just an idea. I've always talked about with this podcast that like, we may have the vaccine and people may be, able physically to go there. But the question is, do we think that people might be turned off due to this COVID experience in getting in close proximity just mentally?
Yeah.
Because I've read stuff from doctors and stuff like that are saying like, there's some people that are going to be scarred from this for the rest of their life, not only because of, the death and the actual depression from being isolated, but literally from, the expectation that being around other people is a negative thing in our lives. You know what I mean? Because like, think about, I try to think if I went to a show now, it'd be really weird for me at first, like even if they were like, everything's cool, nobody has COVID here, everyone's vaccinated, I would still like in the back of my mind, because we've been trained for almost 9 months now, like be like, oh, I don't know about this.
Right? Yeah. And I think it's going to be a gradual process to get back into that. I think just with just getting those normal feelings back of like being okay in a group of 500 plus people packed into a room, but also just with getting the vaccine itself, because it seems like there are different reports and everything's very new as of this moment, but it seems like really the US isn't really going to see much effect until like a year from now. Which also, going back to the article a little bit, it is exciting right now to receive all this funding, to receive people investing into your company. But what happens if it's taking longer than those investors initially thought? And it most likely is going to take longer.
Agreed.
Right. I think long term, like, it's interesting because like at the same time, I don't believe that idea of like too big to fail. You know what I mean? In terms of like, this company's so big, it cannot fail.
I mean, we saw that with Quibi.
Yeah, Quibi is an immediate example, but I was thinking more of the term in like, when 2008 happened and the housing crisis and all that stuff. People kept saying these companies are too big to fail and stuff like that. And I feel like that's very true for entertainment right now, is like people kind of look at a Live Nation and they go, this company's too big to fail. And I, part of me is like, yeah, that makes sense. And like, I feel like this increase in 20% kind of shows that people still believe that this company is going to be a monster again in the industry. And that's why they're willing to invest and put so many dollars through it. Is there a point though, if, like you're saying with the vaccine, if it gets delayed or we can't do it, or like again, even with the vaccine, we got to talk about rollout. You got to manufacture it. Enough people got to take it and all that kind of stuff. If we have so many hurdles in the road, I feel like there's a limited span of people who are willing to invest long-term and keep that going even with all these hurdles. Now, again, I do believe that like if I was a person and I was like an investor and I had an opportunity to get with one of these giant companies that I think is going to stay around, this would be the time to buy. Again, no stock advice here, but like in my opinion, it's just like one of those things where if I'm like a venture capitalist or something, this is kind of like one of the things
this is turning into mad money.
I know. I just need to start screaming at the camera, buy, 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 buy.
You need a giant hammer smash. Right.
But like, I think that there's definitely, what I'm trying to say is I think there's an amount of people and an amount of money that people are willing to give these companies in terms of investing and even just straight out like support through monetary stuff. And the more roadblocks we hit, the worse it's going to be.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's just going to get stretched thinner and thinner. Now, in a terrible way, and this is going to sound terrible at first, but like in a terrible way, all these people that are trying to do illegal shows and do them without masks, and all these people that are like, we want to be in large gatherings anyway, at least show to me the public's not forgetting about concerts here.
Oh, absolutely.
So like the demand's going to be there. The demand, I think, is going to be heavy and it's going to be there. But at the same time, with my argument about if people are going to be uncomfortable, it might be a little less than we think because of all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, we're just going to have to see what's going to go on with this. Hopefully we can just get this out in a safe manner. That's what I hope for all of this, is that it prevents people from being hurt.
Yeah, and it seems like the venues and the promoters that have backing that are major promoters and stuff are being safe about it. But it is more like those underground venues,
right?
That worry me more.
I think for me, it's just like there is a the reason that they're even willing to risk dealing with all this COVID bullshit, the BP, like the protective gear, the temperature checks and stuff, is because they know that there are people at such a high demand for this, that they're willing to, in some aspects, literally risk their lives to go there. So like, it's going to be interesting there. I mean, I know the levels are different, especially with your kind of music. I couldn't imagine, the reason you go there is so you go push, be in the mosh pit, do some hammer rolls and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like one of those things where it's just like, that's difficult though. Like I could, if you're an old person, you want to go see Elton John, okay, come sit in the seat. You'll be 12 feet from the left, 12 feet from the right, nobody there. That's easy to do. But when you're selling, especially in your music, an experience, that's hard. You know what I mean?
I think it depends on the venue too. Cause like I would be much more comfortable going to like the Ryman where it's like a seated venue.
And it's going to depend on the state and local governments.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
what they require.
Absolutely.
So I don't know. And also if they're even willing to crack down on it, because like, especially in, smaller kind of venues, or if it's in a house, for instance, not everybody's going to be like, okay, let's call the cops on these people. Let's get this party over with. Let's do this. Let's socially shame these people.
Well, who's enforcing it too?
Right. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, in Nashville, some of the cops don't enforce it.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
you go on Broadway and there's a bunch of people with no mask, and there's a mask mandate here.
Yeah. Nobody.
But at the same time, it's like, as a community, I've seen, especially like with that giant house that got house party a while ago that got taken down.
Was it the 615?
The 615 house.
Yeah.
That one got completely taken down, like in terms socially, and made a lot of people probably lose money or something like that, or get a fine because of the public pressure.
Right.
So I don't know, what these small communities of music will do, because everyone has their own hive mind and everything. And if like, we're the, I don't know, if we're the local, rap scene or something like that, and we're very underground or whatever, you could have a different hive mindset of like what's acceptable than like the local hardcore scene and stuff like that. So that's the other thing, is it's just going to come down to people and public, participation. And I don't want to say shaming,
acceptance.
but shaming. You know what I mean? So
absolutely. Well, I guess moving on from that great non-depressing topic, we're going to talk about more Twitch licensing tensions, which have been increasing, which is not a very big surprise. We've talked about kind of Twitch's situation in the music industry, along with TikTok as well.
Right.
Who
I've talked about a little bit about this Twitch stuff, about them having a lot of issues with the actual crackdown of these, especially the RIAA with stuff. And it's just gotten worse.
Oh, absolutely. And the pressure is going to continue. So the music industry is no stranger to cracking down on copyright infringements, as we have seen with many digital platforms over the years. The most egregious being YouTube's copyright system, as we have all had to deal with at some point. But now the music eye has turned to Amazon-owned company Twitch, which has faced criticism over its lack of licensing agreements for songs played and streamed on the live streaming service. One of these critics seems to be RIAA, which flooded Twitch with 38,000 takedown notices this year, and Chairman CEO Mitch Glazer stating, Twitch wants to try to get away with paying nothing and reaping the benefits of artists using their service. They're not going to. With Twitch VP and head of music Tracy Chan responding in a statement with, legally, we're doing everything correctly and we are about empowering creators. According to Chan, you can make a living as a musician on Twitch with its monetization system, even with a small following, as median viewership for creators who are making 50 grand or more is just 180 individuals per stream. The company has also gone on to state that the number of musicians on track to earn more than $25,000 in revenue this year grew 735% from January to September. Twitch currently does not have any licensing deals with UMG, Sony Music, WMG, or any of their publishing arms, but does have agreements with PROs, ASCAP, and BMI. Twitch also does not have any liability for resulting copyright infringement as long as its policies as long as it polices the site by taking down videos and streams flagged by copyright holders, following the DMCA, Digital Millennium Copyright Act of 1998, which has a safe harbor provision that protects platforms with their host user uploaded content from being sued. So it would be insane if some dude in the middle of nowhere uploaded a Mariah Carey song on YouTube and YouTube got sued, right?
Yeah.
That would be crazy. So that's one of the reasons that's a thing. So as Billboard points out in the article, historically, the music industry has cracked down on online platforms that grow to a certain point, such as YouTube, which renewed multi-year licensing deals with UMG, WMG, and Sony Music in 2017, and more recently, TikTok, which has a short-term licensing deal with the big three in March. So the reason that these companies want to crack down on them is so that the platform wait to crack down. My apologies. The reason that the companies wait to crack down on these platforms is that the platforms actually have to grow a little bit before like they can make any money off the music itself. If there's no audience listening, they're not going to make any music, any money from it, no ad revenue, nothing like that. So what they do, and this is crazy, because it's kind of sleazy, to be honest, but it's definitely a strategy, is they wait until these like companies get massive success and then they just stack them with lawsuits. They basically just go in and they're like, I'm suing you for this infringement, this infringement, this infringement. And they're like, wait. DMCA, we're protected on that. And they just continue to keep on the pressure until basically the company backs down. They're like, okay, fine, we'll get a licensing agreement with you. And that's basically what all of these labels are doing, and all of these, honestly, some of the PROs as well. So what makes Twitch different from everything else is that A, it's owned by Amazon and Jeff Bezos, the richest guy ever, and B, the pandemic has shifted more users to the site as well as more copyrighted music that isn't getting paid for when artists need it the most. So all these artists are looking for this revenue that they're like, hey, I got like 300 streams on this one dude's live and I'm not getting paid for the song he played 30 times on the stream, you know? So the situation becomes even more complicated as more content on the site is live. So it's harder to police and monetize, even though it is archived in the system and you can go back and watch clips. So although every live stream requires a public performance license from a PRO like ASCAP or BMI, they also require licenses for the use of recording from a label or of any pre-recorded music, which is a lot of the time, mostly all the time. So according to Billboard, there doesn't seem to be a united front either against Twitch from the music industry, and artists have needed live streaming content more than ever since the pandemic. So these festivals and these artists making deals with Twitch, with these streaming services, feel like they don't have any bargaining power to say, hey, fucking pay me, please. You know? So what do you guys think about this situation? I know it's very time sensitive now with the pandemic, but I think, what are your thoughts generally? If we didn't have any pandemic, what are your thoughts? And give me your thoughts now during the pandemic.
Zach, you can go first if you want.
I think this is obviously one of many positions that artists get put in all the time, which is like, hey, you are going to get paid, but we're paying you an exposure. Like, it's cool, you know, like all these people are like checking out your shit, whatever.
I'm going to buy a jet with exposure.
Right. You know? Absolutely. Full of exposure. And you know, the problem is, you know, it's this constant battle that we have between consumers and artists across, like, you know, all fronts, which is, you know, everything should be fucking free. You know, artists should just, you know, do this out of the good of their heart and out of this and that. And, you know, I can understand right now why the business model needs to sort of grow into itself. But again, this is a company that is backed by fucking Jeff Bezos. And you're telling me that you don't have any revenue to potentially dish out to artists that need it right now. So the problem is, you know, we are constantly adapting to these new systems that, you know, are sort of optimizing themselves in real time and making adjustments in real time, especially with, the context of the pandemic. And the unfortunate part about that is we're left without answers or, a clear line to how we can make this work to where it benefits all parties involved. So it's one of those things that I think is just going to have to play itself out in time before we can see anything substantial come, or really any support for artists to sort of emerge from this.
So, yeah, I completely agree with that. I think the first thing that I think is happening is to kind of go on your pandemic or no pandemic. I think what's happening here is that this is an issue that needed to be discussed, but because of the pandemic and the limited amount of revenue streams is getting strangleholded into your face more. And it's because these companies and artists are looking for this revenue, and they go, they're all online. They're all trying to build their online presence. And now they're actually paying attention more to Twitch and live streaming components and TikTok about, hey, where is this money actually going? Are you actually paying me for this? So I think it's an eventuality that was going to need to be discussed, but it's definitely like 100 miles an hour. We're pushing the gas all the way down. We need to figure this out now.
Right.
So I think there's two issues here. First is you have the streamers who are playing recorded music over a stream. Second is you have this giant influx of musicians coming to the platform playing either their own music or covers on it, and the weird gray area that is. The streamer stuff has been going on forever. The amount of people that literally just play Spotify on their stream and nothing happens to them is amazing, because because YouTube already has a problem with there's so much content out there that it's so hard to enforce. Now imagine doing that with all the broadcasts being live.
Yeah.
And that's why it's even
how do you
worse.
get a bot to do that?
Yeah. You would have to have a bot looking at everything live. You know what I mean? There's no scanning. There's nothing. It has to do it in it. We're already at the point where a bot can't really tell decisions based on stuff that's already start and stopped. How can you get a bot to make active decisions about stuff that require human nuance to it?
Right? Yeah. It also seems like just in the broad spectrum of Twitch, even some of their takedowns for copyright infringement stuff is shrouded in mystery. Sometimes people just get whipped off the site for some reason, and they are very non-transparent with people or creators about it.
So I completely agree. I mean, there's been a couple of creators where they don't know why they're off on Twitch. Twitch won't give them a very good answer of why they got a ban, why they did all this kind of stuff. And so, that's also just fueling the fire. Yeah. Especially
because the community gets
the community right now is because they haven't had to deal with it on Twitch a lot. And since it's all coming in now, they're like, why is my VOD getting taken down? I have people who come watch my stream after I'm done. Why is it gone now? You know what I mean? And it's like a community that hasn't had to deal with that stuff in YouTube, because it's been funny on a basis that copyright in a lot of people's heads, it's like, oh, YouTube has their own version of copyright and Twitch has their own version. No, it's just the enforcement is way crazier.
Yeah. I will say too, to YouTube's credit, they do a pretty good job with, making it very upfront. Hey, you just shouldn't play any music that's not royalty free, right. Because you're just going to get shit on, basically.
And we talked about the whole podcast because of this, literally, and the beginning of this, actually, Twitch has made an effort to make that Twitch sounds thing that I talked about 2 or 3 episodes ago, where Twitch has actually made a playlist, or it's like a widget, and it basically interacts with your stream and plays music that's already been cleared.
Yeah.
So
which
they
makes
know
sense.
Yeah, they already know this is a problem, so they're trying to, kind of put people there and be like, look, if you're going to play music, play this. So,
which is essentially what TikTok does, right? I mean, with a lot of their music. I mean, now
has an issue, which I was going to cover it on the podcast last episode, but actually TikTok has just got to deal with Sony finally after their short-term deal with all the big 3 fell, and they haven't really affirmed if they're in negotiations with the other parties yet, but it's probably coming in the background if they've agreed with Sony on something. So they're kind of ahead of the game compared to Twitch right now. But so again, that's one issue. It's just streamers playing music on their own stream that's not theirs. The other issue, which is super gray and super weird, and I think what a lot of people who are more music minded as opposed to like actually streamer, like we watch streams, we like video games minded, are these musicians on the platform. Because the musicians have exploded out of necessity because they're trying to have diverse income that they lost in touring. And so the problem with this is that now you're having this exact argument about, is this a live performance and a public performance royalty? Or is this a actual regular royalty in terms of you covered this by making a recording of it, and therefore the labels have to deal with that and the publishing arm has to deal with that? And that's an interesting question. I'd actually be interested in what y'all think. If I went on a stream and played, let's say I played 30 Nights of Violence song, which would be really funny if I played a metal hardcore band song.
Well, you're playing Mario 64.
Yeah. Well, no. What I'm talking about is I physically played it. I made like I played it on guitar or something. And I went on there and I did it, and then it was over. And then it was a video of the day at the end of the day so other people could access it later. Is it a PRO publicity, like rights actual issue? Is that where the royalties going, or is it going towards a recording? What do you think? Because that's the real question here.
Yeah, I feel like we've seen precedent with covers on YouTube where it seems more leaning more PRO than label, because it's not the actual like recorded medium of the song. You know what I mean? Unless you're like sampling it, I don't see how that would really translate to
the thing is more of, if you're like a publisher, for instance, and you made like, think about it like this. What is the difference between me playing it and making my own version of it on a stream or a YouTube video versus I made my own version on an album? Because they're essentially the same if you think about it.
Yeah.
One just has video on top of it. So that's the weird part, is like, is there a PRO royalty going on, a public performance royalty when they stream it? And then is there a royalty after the fact if somebody goes and looks at your video of the day?
Right.
Yeah, that's what gets nuts.
Yeah, it seems that the massive kicker here is the fact that once the stream is archived and then it's readily available for anybody to access at a given point, much like any sort of on-demand streaming service, that's where I think this starts to become like the real gray area. Because if you go on and you were to cover a song or something of that nature on a live stream that's available one time only, was only a live event, that kind of thing, then that's one thing. But because it becomes this tangible, archived piece of work that you can access at any given point beyond that, that's where I think the sort of road forks, in which case of where do we kind of categorize this?
Right. And generally, a lot of these like VODs and stuff like that are on a limited time basis.
What is a VOD?
It is a video of the day.
Okay.
So like basically, if you do a stream and you basically are like, okay, I stream for 4 hours. And then what happens is it gets uploaded to your channel on Twitch. And that is accessible by a user after the fact. Mm-hmm. And I believe
if they miss the stream or
if
something.
they miss the stream. So like if, I don't know, if you're doing like a Pokemon Let's Play on stream and somebody was like, well, I don't want to miss him going to the 6th gym in Pokemon, you could like go click on it and watch it. Mm-hmm. But like, I know that was the worst. That was a really specific example. Hold on for me, non-Pokemon fans. I also like Digimon. Anyway, so like basically what I'm trying to say is that a lot of the times that is limited. It goes away over time. Some people have access, and I don't know. This is the part where I don't know because I'm new to streaming in a lot of ways, is there are some people, and sometimes people can save these clips for a longer amount of time than they disappear for. So like a lot of the bigger streamers might have like a clip of like, oh, this was crazy one day, and now it's saved somewhere. So that's where it gets even weirder because it's even longer. Because like I feel like if you view it like this, I think, and for the detriment of Twitch, it's both.
Yeah.
I think that
there's just so many layers.
I think that it's a performance royalty for people. If there's a way, I think this is how Twitch would have to say it if they came after, and it would require a shit ton of work on the technical end, is to go, how many people were viewing at the exact time that this person performed this? That's the performance royalty.
I think-
And then saved after the fact, how many views did this get before this VOD went away? And then that is the traditional royalty for the publisher and the label.
Yeah. I agree with that. I feel like that would be a better system as well. And I think every party would be pretty happy at that point.
Compared to YouTube, how much money that is?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's essentially
the
double.
The worth of a sound recording is different from a performance.
Right.
So it's and so like getting 13,000 views on a YouTube video is not as impressive as 13,000 live viewers.
Right.
You know,
made it a point to be there.
Exactly.
Like, at the time that
you
you're
literally
streaming.
scheduled it in your day.
Right.
So it's I do think that's something with live that's just honestly kind of exciting, is just seeing how things are going to be laid out legally for a lot of musicians. I also think, like you said before, because of the pandemic, everything has been like just upfront now. Like, you know, we've been talking, a lot of music business people we all know have talked about live stream and is it going to take over the music industry by storm? And people have been talking about that for 4 years, and now it's just done.
Now it's like all these people are actually concerned with it. Which
Exactly.
is really funny.
People give a shit now. You know, they take it seriously now.
Well, it's hilarious to me. If you want my honest advice, if you are a musician that's trying to live stream, watch people who live stream things that are not music.
yeah.
And watch how they market things and watch what they do. Because I think, in my personal opinion, I think, and I've said this multiple times, a live stream is not a replacement of a performance. It's a different thing.
Yeah, and you have to treat it as such.
Treat it differently.
Right.
And so I think you have to see what other people do in the space. There's a reason that, you know, like a Dr. Disrespect, who's a huge streamer, has that many streams.
Is he on Twitch anymore, though?
Yeah, I think he got back, I think is what happened
Okay.
to him. But like, you know, or a Pokemon, like any one of those huge streamers is like, there's a reason they're so big. It's the interactivity, it's the branding, it's the look, which is very similar and should, if you're an artist, should be a very easy to pivot because you already have the branding and look part down. But you need to learn the tools of the trade because it's not the same game.
Yeah.
Like the interactivity is so different than being on stage. When you're on stage, it's like, everybody shut up.
No, for real.
I'm gonna start saying
Zach's
some things.
definitely said that.
Yeah, I actually have. Not with 30 Nights, but I have in the past.
Yeah, you give a good shut up.
I try.
Yeah, but Dex the person that you want. This is like, you should put this on your resume. I am the person that is perfect for quieting a loud room.
Hey, yeah, it's like I hate the sort of like same like entrepreneurial question that everyone asks, which is, you know, what's your superpower? I guess I'll just say that. I mean, I can make rooms be really quiet. I don't know.
I'll before I go, I'm not gonna go on a tangent on this. I just think that you have this ability to seem like you're a quiet guy or whatever, and then you go up to it and you're like, "Hey,"
Yeah.
Yeah.
and like everyone's
fair.
like, "Oh my god, the quiet guy talked."
Well,
Yeah.
I think too, you just know what to say too to get people to listen, which is important. You don't talk a lot. I feel like I talk a lot. We're going off
just cut
track.
this out
Yeah.
and send it to. If you get a
But-
job interview in the future for stuff, just cut this out and
will.
be like, "Here's some strengths I got shouted out on a podcast for."
These two hairy dudes say I'm cool, so please.
Speaking of a hairy dude, Florida Georgia Lions Tyler Hubbard.
Very
if you
hairy.
guys have heard about this. He was going to be on the second CMA Awards as a performer with Florida Georgia Line because he's the other half of it, but they're going to have to cancel because he tested positive for COVID. And the
Shit,
reason
man.
why I'm talking about this is because this is not the first person from the CMA Awards to cancel for COVID. And I think it's an interesting conversation because the CMAs are kind of pushing forward with, we're doing this live, this is real, we're doing it here. And a lot of other venues and stuff and other award shows we've seen this year have gone, no. Especially with the stuff pandemic, like stuff just spiking right now. So Hubbard revealed on Monday the 9th that he had tested positive in an Instagram post stating, and I love the way he says this, he goes, quote, "Some of y'all guessed it, got the Rona, asymptomatic, quarantine on bus, miss my family, writing songs." Thankful.
There's so many periods.
I know. No, in the Instagram post, it's all in a line. So it's like, some of y'all guessed it, period.
It's like a hymn
Yeah.
or a haiku.
Yeah, I love it. That's why I love saying it. And like, if he wants to get mad at me, that's fine. But when you have a period, you usually take a pause. So sorry. Anyway, he hinted at fans the day before, you'll love this, with another Instagram post saying, quote, "Any ideas why I would have my tour bus parked in the driveway?" And then it was like a photo of his dog and the tour bus.
I like to think the dog was like photoshopped onto the photo, because I feel like that's more put together
I
than
just
these
think that's like
captions.
such a, like, I'm glad that he's safe. I'm glad that his family, you know, doesn't have to deal with that, and he's asymptomatic and he has a place to stay or whatever. But at the same time, I'm like, this is kind of an insensitive way to do this. Like,
Yeah.
can y'all get, like, it would be like me if I came on this podcast and be like, can y'all guess why I have this IV bag? I have a disease. Like, anyway, so this comes after the announcement that another performer of the CMA Awards, Lee Brice, will also not be performing at the award after contracting the virus. And the Country Music Association released a statement on the two contracting the virus, which I'm going to read a tidbit here. Again, all the articles are always linked in our description if you want to read them. And basically, here's a little part of it I took out. We have been extremely diligent with our testing process in advance of anyone entering our footprint. Every single person has been tested, and many will be tested repeatedly throughout the week. This is in addition to wearing PPE and, of course, practicing social and physical distancing. It goes on to say that the number one priority is safety of everyone involved, and, quote, that will never be compromised, end quote. Ironically, the other half of Florida Georgia Line duo, Brian Kelly, took to Instagram to downplay COVID, posting photos on his story of large celebrations over Joe Biden's win for president, and, quote, wrote that if these throngs could gather with no social distancing, live concerts should be allowed to resume immediately. And then he goes, quote, time to get back to work, America, end quote. Kelly wrote on Instagram, which is on his story, which is why if you go on it, you can't see it anymore. He also ended, and I love this, they threw in, they go, and I was from Variety, but I love the way they phrase it. They go, time to go back to work, America, Kelly wrote on Instagram, presumably before learning of his partner's diagnosis. And then it ends the quote with his quote from his story, booking shows ASAP.
That's what we call stirring the pot.
I know. I just love Variety for being so salty there. Variety also adds Kelly's stance, which was also echoed by Morgan Wallen, who you may remember for being forced off SNL due to his, quote, photographed partying with and kissing fans in public shortly before his planned appearance, end quote, who posted the same photo and also called for concerts to resume immediately.
These don't sound real to me. These interactions don't sound real, but they are.
Hubbard of FGL has not commented on the cancellation of FGL's performance, but the FGL has been removed as a performer on the CMA website. Variety reached out to FGL and CMA reps for comments, and no response has been reported, but he, quote, CMA has told the Tennessean that that Brice had not been involved in any rehearsals before his positive test, which thank God. And Lee Brice is being replaced on the CMA Awards telecast by Lady A's Charles Kelly, which we've talked a lot about Lady A in the past, who will take Brice's place in a duet with Carly Pierce, but no replacement for Florida Georgia Line has been announced. So,
man, there's just so much tea in country music. Am I right?
So it's amazing to me the amount of industry people, especially in Nashville, that I know that deal with country people on a daily basis, and not all country people, I'm not generalizing it, but I mean, there is kind of a thing in country music right now about, you know, the virus and how we should all be just going back to normal, as I've just kind of read from two other people and stuff like that. It's amazing talking to those industry people, and they're just like, yeah, I take it very seriously. I don't fuck with anybody. I always wear a mask. I always be, you know, it's just so weird, the disconnect sometimes between those two things. Because it's a branding thing, in my opinion.
Oh,
it's
it
like
absolutely
their
is a
personal
branding
opinion, and it fits right in the branding of like who they're trying to reach sometimes, you know? I would hate to be a country fan right now who kind of believes in, more of like, we should be careful with this COVID stuff. Cause I would just be so mad that all these people I would probably think are, personal heroes and stuff are just like, no, we should just get back to work immediately and all this kind of stuff. We should just, go on with COVID. And all these people are getting it because they're not doing shit. Again, at the same time, they are with a lot of people. They are stars, but they can control that, especially now. So,
well, what's interesting to me too, because country music, I'm just going to open this up broadly as well, just because I think country music itself is worth talking about in itself, because it's just insane.
It's
the
so
amount of crazy
different from other
subgenres.
genres, and like your genre, it's just one of those things that's very distinctive and everything, and has this distinctive culture. And I think that there are a lot of smart, CMA people and all this kind of stuff, and who know the, stuff going on like that. But I would be very concerned if I was a performer to go here and hear all these people are getting COVID.
What's interesting to me, because if you actually look at the numbers for country music, a lot of country music is actually made outside of this, like the streams and the fans are outside of the South, which is weird in itself. Like a lot of the fans are like in New York City.
Right.
Like I think that's like the number one market for country music. And it's insane to think about that, because you wouldn't think it would be as successful there, being as New York has so many genres of its own that are successful internationally itself. But also I think to country fans, I think, like you said, being a country musician and trying to take it seriously, it's hard to come out and like put a statement like that. Like, hey guys, let's fucking
It's controversial in the branding.
Yeah. And which it shouldn't be, because it's fact that we have a pandemic, and that it's, if you're going to a 500 plus show being packed in like sardines, a person's going to catch it right now, especially in like Nashville, Tennessee, where are we number one now? The state's currently, I think, number 2 in COVID cases, and it's rising. So it's just stuff like that that's what gives country music a bad name. I've met so many smart country musicians that are so talented, and they fucking hate it when people do this, because it makes country music the laughingstock genre, which in all honesty, it has been for the past like 7 years.
Without a doubt. I think like the most important distinction that has to be made too is you kind of have these two very unique pools. I've been fortunate enough over the last couple months to intern with 30 Tigers here in Nashville, who, has a roster that is just flowing with talent in sort of this emerging of this, reinvention of what it means to be a modern country artist, with acts like, Colter Wall, Brent Cobb, Charlie Crockett, these kind of cats who, it's funny, to your point, Colin, that these country acts that seem to sort of be in the counterculture of what it means to be country in the CMA space and that sort of thing, the branding and marketing that they have to use is very much rooted in the opposite, which is being safe, voting, like this sort of thing, like being proactive in your community and that kind of thing, when the opposing side is still, wanting to host the CMAs and, mass crowds of people and that kind of thing.
It's very, and I'm glad to say that this country is very divided in a lot of ways. I mean, and it like politically and also just in the way they brand themselves and stuff like that. And I feel like you're right in terms of, if you look on that other side of what I would almost call more of like the East Nashville kind of country and stuff like that, it's just more of like, it's amazing to me how almost to counter them, they have to be hyperbolic in like the ante. And like, so, that's the thing with country that's so weird is like, okay, I just feel like if you go genre by genre by genre, then like most of them are like, no, we're not fucking with COVID. No, we're not fucking with COVID. No. And then you go to country and it's like, some of them think we should.
Yeah.
And then like, it's just interesting because
that it's even on the table of discussion sometimes.
It's just interesting because I get it. Like genres have their own opinions, fan bases, and there is a conglomeration of ideas in that fan base, but it's, obviously there's outliers and stuff like that. But I think that it's just interesting that all these genres like are like, no, stay safe, don't go to our show or whatever. And unless I will say there is a caveat. if you're, and I'll say this, you're a really shitty band. Like I don't mean to call anybody out, but like if you're a band that's like not been known for a really, really long time for some reason, there's a lot of those like random bands right now that are just like, we're doing a show. We're doing it.
They're making a stand,
Right.
Colin.
Right.
And so it's just
For their
weird.
fans.
Right. Like, like we talked about that Sturgis motorcycle rally with Smash Mouth in it. Like,
Yeah,
I'm not saying that Smash Mouth doesn't have some bangers. Walking on the Sun is a personal favorite.
And I
great
think
one.
Smash Mouth's
Yeah.
a little different because they actually have a very, like they have an active fan base for a long time. you
Right.
know?
But what I'm saying is like, these are bands that are more of like, I'm not looking for your next song.
Yeah.
I want to hear Walking on the Sun, All Star, all that kind of stuff. It's just more of like what it is. It's interesting to see that too, that there's a couple bands. Those are the outliers of the COVID stuff, but it's interesting to see countries like it seems divided on it as opposed to, oh, here we have our outlier
Well,
people.
There's so many segments too, like politically with country, historically with country, genres, and even gender. There's so much separation in country music, and it's disheartening because music at the end of the day is supposed to bring people together, right? It's supposed to be a shared, fun experience, but it can also be a safe experience. You don't have to kill somebody to have a good time. You know what I mean? So I didn't mean to go on like a whole tangent before, but I think something needs to be said for that mindset. And I think people need to speak more on it because the more people don't, the more problems we're going to have.
Right. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. I just think it's more of like, it's interesting. And I think from more of a music and a business side, how it's a branding question.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not just like I don't go out, if I was talking about Ariana Grande, I'm not like, I don't feel like I have to expect her response on COVID, like
Yeah.
what
Right.
she thinks about it. But with country people, it's interesting because I feel like I have to be like, what do you think about COVID? Like, is it a
You have to
big
walk
threat?
on
Do we need
eggshells
to
a little
be
bit.
careful about it? Or is it like we should go out there during the biggest, break that we have with no vaccine and start doing shows?
Right.
Which is like the thing that I think is weird and hilarious about it at the same time.
And it's
Yeah.
dangerous too, because in a lot of cases with country music, the mentality trickles down to the fan base. And so these sort of fans kind of start to, open up their minds to other very unsafe ideas. And I think these sort of artists that are also acting as influencers, whether they sort of know it or not, are really encouraging incredibly dangerous behavior. And I do think that is something that has to be
Right. And
addressed.
it
Yeah.
and then on an artist level, if you're an artist in the space, it perpetuates that idea that, you have to be Mr. Anti-COVID and like being like, oh, we should just do shows right now. Cause it would be like, if you wanted to be a mainstream country artist, like if I thought I want to be a mainstream country artist and I somehow had the talent and look, which look at me, I do not have the talent or look. But like, if I
Got
was
the
like,
talent. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
It's
if I,
talent is
wanted,
there.
if I wanted to do that right now and be like, I'm going to be a country artist, it's weird to think I need to know what I have to say to these people in terms of COVID. And then I feel like if I wanted to be a successful artist, I would look at other artists, like most, artists and people who are successful in the trade and have a passion for country music. And I would feel like, oh, there's a precedent. Morgan Wallen said it, and, half of Florida Georgia Line said it, where it's like, and their fans still really like them and they didn't cease to be a band, that maybe I should be the one to be like, no, we should do shows right now and stuff like that. And I get it. There's a way to do safe shows right now and everything like that. But I just feel like it's more of a lot of people are like, I'm doing a show. It's a drive-in. You have to stay in your car. And I'm a little assuming here, but I feel like if they really wanted to do shows and to fit with their branding, they would be like, everybody out in the stands. And so that's kind of what's going on. I hope that I'll leave it at this. I hope if you're going to do shows right now that you spend the money, you spend the time, you get the experts, especially if you're one of these big country stars, and you do it safely. And like, I get it. It might be weird to your fan base if, you you're Mr., we can do a show. We have the right to do a show or whatever. We have the right to gather or whatever. And you at the front door, like you have to wear a mask. You have to come in with PPE. You have to get your temperature taken and all that stuff. But it's worth it for someone's life,
Absolutely.
Right. All right, Joe. Let's go to another genre that's popping off in Nashville.
Yeah,
have you heard of country music in Nashville, Joe? I've never heard of that.
Yeah, what's country music? What the fuck is that? Well, you might not know this, but Nashville is not just known for its country music. I guess it's known for its country music, but it also has a plethora of genres. One of the bigger ones is pop music. That's actually a huge market here for songwriters. And surprisingly, a lot of K-pop tracks are cut here, which is weird. I guess not cut, but written here. But moving on, another genre that we love, that Nashville loves, is hip hop. And NPR actually did a morning edition special article about Nashville's hip hop scene. And they kind of gave the history on it and why it's kind of in this strange transitional period. So Nashville's hip hop scene is not something that is widely publicized due to its genre giant competitor, country music here. However, Nashville is not just country or pop or hip hop, it's everything. This is Music City, and with that title comes a diverse amount of genres, creators, and fans that not only live and participate here, but actively support it. Morning Edition published a small excerpt about the hip hop scene in Nashville, and I think it's important to talk about because, as the article pointed out, there is a strong amount of growth and potential for the genre here, especially with its recent merge with country music. If you turn on the CMAs or listen to country radio, you are going to hear a beat that's inspired or arguably ripped off from hip hop. NPR points out also, quote, to a large degree, the scene here is the creation of Black music makers and entrepreneurs who came up in the cities or surrounding region. But it has long existed in the shadow of a country music industry coded as a white domain, thanks in part to the contributions of biopic music makers being continually written out of the historical narrative that is also the prime draw for transplants seeking creators in music, the main attraction for tourists, and in many ways, the centerpiece of Music City's brand. The article then went on to say that during the rise in hip hop in the 2010s, Nashville began to take interest in the genre, stating, commercial country began adapting elements of hip hop's aesthetic, vocal cadences, melodic patterns, performing postures, beat making techniques, and other textures for the templates that numerous white male stars would use to score hits. The floodgates really opened up after the duo Florida Georgia Line that we discussed before got its remix Swagger on with a walloping program beat and gung ho gust verse from Nelly, which I actually didn't know Nelly was on a FGL song.
Yeah.
But that's
Nelly's
kinda
on a
nuts.
couple country songs.
Wow, that's crazy to me. But for all the profit made off of its identity, the industry took little notice of the communities connected to and specializing in hip hop, including the one growing in its own backyard, which, I mean, it's very true. We hardly even hear about hip hop, I feel like, in Nashville, even though it is a growing genre here and Memphis too. I mean, Memphis has had it for like decades at this point. And it's only, I feel like just recently more and more artists are coming to Nashville specifically to make hip hop music. Now is the time. But NPR then interviewed scene legend and founder of Love Noise, a Nashville-based promotions company, Eric Holt, about the scene and the struggles that it's had in order to compete against the country genre. Holt states, quote, everybody talks about this. If you're talented in urban music or black music, the first thing you need to do if you're living in Nashville is to move to LA, New York, Atlanta. And Love Noise is really trying to change that narrative. The article also pointed out that the big Nashville hip hop artists Young Buck and Starlito caught momentum outside of the city due to its lack of industry infrastructure, and in my opinion seems to be the case for a lot of artists who aren't in country or Americana or pop, etc., or songwriting, I guess you can loop in there as well.
Right.
So there's a couple things to kind of break down here. I mean, obviously, there's a huge disconnect between how much vast infrastructure we already have here and the growing genre that's being ignored essentially in Nashville.
So I mean, we've talked about this. I think the pro is we have the infrastructure, and I mean, we have labels, we have publishers, we have
Producers,
we have so we have all this kind of stuff. And like the thing with it, and like a lot of other genres that have migrated here, especially pop, is like it's here, it's ready to go. It's very cheap to live here in Tennessee compared to a California and a New York. And so it's a very attractive option. There's a lot of companies that are big companies moving their headquarters here, doing all that kind of stuff, building a building up. It just makes sense. It seems like a place, especially with Nashville's explosive real estate growth and stuff, also that this would be an attractive place to have a music-centered, career. I personally, like when I look at this, I think that part of it is a little bit of not coming into the turf of some of the country stuff and seeming as a competitor, and also just like I like at a level just not knowing, people not embracing the genre entirely here, I think is kind of what it's a duo thing.
Yeah.
On the country part, it's like, look, I feel like if you if you're a rapper here or something like that, or if you make beats and stuff like that, it seems like it's very attractive to go, well, the money right now in Nashville is in country. So I could make a beat for this guy and we could have a rap hit in the rap market and maybe even go, become a popular song like a Drake or something like that level and stuff. But that seems very hard. It would be easy. Why don't I make a beat for Florida Georgia Line or somebody else like that, and they use it in a country song, and they're already established. It's way easy. The label executives are already trying to push a lot of country here. Just easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like that's why I feel like it's a little hard to be like, if I was a producer or a beat maker or something like that, to really go, well, I'm going to go full in on this, rap scene right now, because it's so easy to do it like that because the infrastructure is set up for country, like in a lot of ways.
I also think there's a lot of competition just geographically as well. I mean, Atlanta is so close.
Well, yeah, Atlanta's known for so much. And then also rap, I mean, is arguably what's taken over. If it's not known as the genre pop, the other thing on the charts is rap.
Yeah. It's
a hyper competitive genre compared to most genres that exist right now. I mean, it took the spot of what rock music used to be, So that it's like, that's the other thing against it, is just so much.
Yeah.
But
Zach, what do you think? I know you're an avid hip hop fan.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the biggest issues, as far as maybe the disconnect between the general Nashville music community and maybe some of the other hip hop acts that sort of exist here, is access. You know what I mean? I think take it way back to when Rick Rubin started Def Jam, right? He created Def Jam out of a necessity, because you hear music on the radio that is dubbed, hip hop music at that time, and but you go to the clubs where the music is actually being created and actively exists, and it's not the same thing. And I feel like we're kind of seeing a similar situation here. You might have a producer or, someone within the hip hop space who might go for, for lack of a better term, and this is obviously subjective, but maybe like the low hanging fruit that is something like, I don't know, a Florida Georgia Line or a, pop country track or something like that, or where the genres kind of meet. Or do you dedicate yourself more to what is authentic to your genre and your identity? And because of that, Rick Rubin kind of took this sort of similar approach, started Def Jam, and started putting out authentic hip hop. And I feel like we're starting to get to this sort of peak where I think hopefully maybe an independent label for something in the hip hop space sort of could exist in Nashville and actually put out records that are authentic to the genre itself and are telling stories from those communities, as opposed to somebody else who may not be necessarily qualified to sort of dip their toe into that culture, in my opinion.
I think also the infrastructure for shows here is very difficult. Like country, if you want to move here and be a country musician, guess what you're doing? You're going on Broadway.
Right.
And you're playing all those bars until something happens basically, and like either a publishing deal or record deal, and you have a way of sustaining yourself in the city. Like I know, like when I used to mix off Broadway on 2nd Avenue, I knew so many bands there that were just trying to make it, trying to become it. And what they say is just go on Broadway and stuff like that. And it's like their safety. I mean, they go tour somewhere else and then they come back, but they always come back to Broadway.
Yeah.
'Cause that's, what it is. It's very hard to be like, I'm a rapper. I want to be, a great musician and I want to, up my craft. The infrastructure is very hard here. I know rap shows and stuff like that, but nothing close to the country.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And a lot of the local venues prioritize touring acts.
Well, they prioritize touring acts. They also prioritize
Full bands.
Full bands is the other thing, because it's like the other thing with Nashville is it's like if you're not a country musician, then you're usually like an instrumentalist in some way. So you either play a guitar or like sing or something like that. So it's just a little strange. I think it's the same. You're kind of saying the same thing of why we don't have a giant EDM space here. Like I know a friend of mine who's really into the EDM Nashville space, works hard in it, does all this stuff, and he even knows it's not a giant thing.
Yeah.
But like, I think the thing for me is it's like the infrastructure's here and it could totally happen. It's just going to come down to we need someone to really break through the weeds. And
I definitely think there needs to be more representation in industry fields.
Absolutely.
For people gunning, hey, I'm not working in the country space at all. I'm here because I have a rap artist.
Let's talk about the pop stuff, because it's so funny. Because if you're an industry professional, especially in Nashville, or trying to be one, I guarantee you've seen this before. Hey, nice to meet you. What's your name? Colin. Oh, Colin, what do you do? Yeah, we're here in Nashville, but actually, believe it or not, I work in pop music.
Right.
How many times have you heard this?
Yeah.
Like
All the time.
all the time. And so like, I hope we can get to that point with rap, and stuff like that. It's like, and I know a couple people who are very adamant about it and about developing the rap space here. But like in terms of, the other thing with pop, which we can talk about pop in Nashville, is it's kind of like a stone's throw for country, I think, in a lot of ways. Because, like, let's think about it. You have, if we go from country to pop, country artists have been on the pop charts before. The one notable example that I want to talk about is like Shania Twain. Shania Twain used to do, here's the country version of a song, and here's my pop version. And it sounds more pop. Like, what do? Oh, you just change the instrumentation. And she sings just like a pop singer does. I mean, if you want to argue, there's a lot of crossover there. And then like, oh, okay, all the studios are here that have, you can do giant instrumentation here. You can have drums here. You can do all that live instruments and stuff. It's not a huge dunk way far away from country to go, oh, let's just make some, pop music, because the infrastructure's towards instrumental kind of stuff like that. What's hard about rap is like, I mean, you could do it like anywhere as opposed to country, where it's like, you want to go in $1 million studio, you want to get the Neumann, you want to get that fucking right on there on your face, and then you play guitar in there, and we get these session musicians just to knock it out. That infrastructure is hard. There's not a lot of people I know here, even though if you want to know the truth, of people dying for people who are really good at like a Logic making beats kind of thing here.
Yeah.
And so like, that's the other thing, is I think it's a little bit further of a stone's throw from country. But again, like Florida Georgia line made bro country what it is, and bro country is just rap and country put together. I mean, I remember, back in the day, we're talking about in LA, like Country Grammar, which was like that fucking song. But like, yeah, like it's not out of reach. It's just, I think that we need, hopefully someone's going to have to break through here, be embraced by the community, which I feel like a lot of people are embracing rap more and more as time goes on since I've lived here. And then them get such notoriety, and then them be like, yeah, I'm from Nashville. I based in Nashville and stuff like that. And then that's where it would be, people would be like, Nashville for rap. And that would cultivate more people coming in and more investment in the space.
Yeah. And it seems like that seems to be the game plan for the scene, is for more to make it a priority to keep these people in town. because if you don't lock shit down, it's just going to be the same.
I definitely think the hardest battle is going to be performing shows and getting that down here and having a venue that's really willing to invest in local hip hop rap talent, and have that more as the center point of the venue.
That too, and also, I think just getting representation as an artist. I think it's hard because you walk into a management office here, and their entire roster is country singer-songwriter. Every single one of them, it's like, it's hard to be like
bread and butter. They want to diversify.
Yeah. I mean, they have some pop acts in there, and they have like little other acts that they sprinkle in, but for the most part, the moneymaker is country music, locally at least.
Sure.
And then if they find a pop act or a hip hop act, they'll probably most likely pitch it to the New York, LA, Atlanta offices.
See, that's what I'm worried about, is that it'd be very tempting if I really went through the weeds here and we're like, no, I'm Nashville based. I do Nashville shows here. I'm really trying to get a record label going. It would be very hard if I was, a hip hop artist or just like a general rapper, not to be like, you want to transfer me to New York? You want to transfer me to LA? I'll move there if you guys got the services, and I know the scene's bigger there. It would just be very difficult to be like,
well, and then like writing songs with people that are in your genre, there's probably more people. If you look at the credit list for most rap songs now, it's just like off the chain how many songwriters there are.
5 to 6. Yeah. Generally a lot of producers. I think it's just maybe an element that is sort of missing from the community here again might be maybe not an entire label that has to dedicate itself to breaking really solid hip hop. But maybe if these, publishing companies and labels want to diversify themselves, that they need to actually dedicate personnel to actively scout out this sort of talent, because the talent we've all established is not the issue. The talent is here. Mm-hmm. It just is going to take time if you want the true diversification to sort of take place, to actually invest and develop these artists and grow them into their full potential of what they can be. But again, you have so many people who would rather take convenience over that and go to in Atlanta, New York, LA, that sort of thing. Again, I think it takes a little bit of both. You need the representation. You also need the personnel. You need, better infrastructure. How can we lend this to live performances better? There's a lot. It just needs a lot of attention.
Yeah. Right? And I think paying attention to the demand is going to be the catalyst for that.
The one thing that I will argue for Nashville, if you are like, a hip hop artist or a rap artist and trying to think about staying here, is the price, because it is so much cheaper living here than LA and New York. Mm-hmm. It is that, and that's the reason why, look, we all, I know a bunch of country people are excited about, the labels and all this stuff moving here. To say that it's not because of the infrastructure we have and the cheapness of land and cost of living here is stupid. Say that it's anything more than that is stupid in my opinion. But that's just me. All right. Well, we're going to go to the last part. I don't know why I'm introing it like this. Joe, what music you been listening to?
I've been listening to, kind of a plethora. You kind of put me on the
Zach,
spot.
Zach, did we tell you about this? We keep forgetting to tell you.
Oh, no, you didn't. But I mean, hey.
So give Joe a second. Basically, we just ask people what they've been listening to recently. And if you're like, oh, this is awesome, that's fine. You don't have to give me a book. You can just say who the artist is or something like that. Mm-hmm. So Joe, what do you got?
So I've been listening to a lot to the single called "Best Worst Year" by Strabe, and we discovered the song together, I think, and it's just honestly, I'd like to point out the stream numbers increased a lot this year, because I guess it makes sense because it's pretty a terrible year, so it's fitting. I've also been kind of diving into Vince Staples' Summertime '06 record. I don't know, that record hit me at a good spot, I feel like, in early college, and I've kind of just been going back to that for some comfort. And a lot of I rediscovered Kimbra. Have you guys listened to Kimbra?
Yeah, I know.
Holy shit.
From somebody I used to know days.
Yeah. I mean, her backstory is insane. She was a classically trained jazz singer from the age of like 6
Wow.
or something. Yeah. And like she's been signed to a label, I think since she was like 12 years old or something crazy. But she only has like a couple of records out under Kimbra. And I mean, they're great. I recommend listening because she's really transformed as a pop singer and jazz singer. And she's really taken her ability, her range to another level, I feel like.
Yeah. Zach, what have you been listening to?
Quite an eclectic mix of things.
We like eclectic.
Oh yeah. I'll start off by something that's just been dominating my listening ever since it came out pretty recently. Is the new One O Tricks Point Never record, also known as Daniel Lopatin, who is an electronic artist who specializes in sort of soundtrack oriented. He actually did the soundtrack for both Good Time and Uncut Gems. But he has his solo act known as One O Tricks Point Never, and he put out a record that is called Magic One O Tricks Point Never. It's insane. It explores some of the most unique, ethereal sort of soundscapes. If you're really into like modular synths and that kind of thing, this is right up
Speaking
your
my
alley.
language.
Yeah, it's great. I listen to it all the time. I listen to it when I wake up, when I'm in the car. It fits the mood all the time. Very vibey. I'm a big fan of it. I think it's probably his best solo effort to date, excluding some of the soundtracks that he's done. But he's fantastic. Another thing that's been taking up a lot of my listening is actually the newest Post Animal LP, Forward Motion Goddessy. Absolutely insane. Sort of really a little bit of everything. Has some very spacey, very open, almost like sort of weird meditation music type of stuff. And then also delivers just like insane pop rock sort of, just total ear candy. I think like Safe or Not is one of the most insane cuts off of that record. But those two records in particular have been taking up a lot of my listening as of late.
Awesome. Yeah. I've been listening to this song because we watched this movie called Loved Ones, and it's it's called I'm Not Pretty Enough. Thank you.
Oh my
No,
God.
it's called Not Pretty Enough. It's by this Australian country girl named Casey Chambers. It's like the most girly song. It's like I'm not pretty.
You have to experience it by watching the movie.
Yeah, you have to watch the movie. We're doing movie recs now, apparently. But it's very integral to the movie. It's a horror movie. I'm just going to warn you that right now. But I really like the song. It's like literally the most girly song I've ever heard in my life. Probably up there as one of them because it's literally about her being like, am I not pretty enough for you? Am I not good enough for you?
I dig.
Like all that kind of stuff.
I can relate.
Yeah. And so I've been doing that. And then I got back into Flight of the Conchords again.
Yeah, I feel like every like 2 weeks you're like, I'm back in it.
Yeah. I've been listening to their like, what is that called? I think it's just Flight of the Conchords is their first album because I was listening to like a couple of ones that were all on the HBO show. I just really like Flight of the Conchords. They're fun.
Yeah, they are fun. Well, Zach, thanks again for joining us. I mean, this was great.
Thank you so much for having me.
I always love talking to you because you always provide like a deeper level to a topic. So I really appreciate that. But I'd also like to point out, because I forgot to intro this earlier, but you're now an editor for Gold Sounds zine, right? Based in Nashville.
So I serve as a Grateful Dead columnist.
Hell yeah.
I am a huge Grateful Dead fan. I have been since I was about 3 years old. And that my first column sort of talks about
I blocked it with my finger.
sort of talks about my initial experiences, kind of getting into Grateful Dead music and kind of what that culture sort of surrounds. And now I'm sort of exploring different avenues of writing about shows and that kind of thing. The column was sort of inspired by the Grateful Dead historian known as Dick, who ran a...
It's a perfect name.
I know. He ran a series of shows known as Dick's Picks, which
so good, dude. That's such a good name.
Yeah, and he but he served as the archivist and historian sort of the Dead's live performances and had access to this mass vault of shows. And so I'm just sort of picking up after his scraps and kind of giving my 2 cents about shows that I like. So yeah, you can check that out if that's your shit.
Awesome. And you got your band, 30 Nights of Violence.
Yep.
Best hardcore band in Nashville.
Thank you.
In my opinion.
I appreciate that.
Well, yeah, that's showbiz, baby.